Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Taurus and Aquarius rising. I like to do these sun rising sign combinations because I feel like when you're talking about image, a lot of times a person focuses on the sun sign. And yeah, I mean, that's the most important aspect of the planets and signs overall, but the rising sign is kind of the calling card. It's the first thing that you see, and that can definitely influence the perception that others have of you, but also, just how you present yourself. I think especially in terms of a defense mechanism, if the two signs are not really compatible, astrologically. And in this case, we're talking about two fixed signs that in astrology square off to one another. They have to be within a certain degree span to actually do so. So you would have to check your chart. I use astro.com because they provide an aspects table, so it's already there and it's very easy to see it. But in any case, you can get a feel for, even if you don't have the actual square, you can see how this will play out in a grander scale. Squares are fraught with tension, and it can feel as if there's a frustration between how you behave around other people or present yourself in general, and it could even involve how you dress and how you are perceived. And so it can be something where there's false advertising. But it's like, I'll give myself as an example. I don't have the square, but I have an in conjunction. My sun is in Sagittarius, and I have Taurus rising. And I feel a lot of times, or in the past, especially when I felt like that Taurus was front and center in my 20s, for instance, that there was this disconnect between my rising sign and my appearance and my mannerisms and, that kind of thing, and who I really was. However, it's not, to me, the in conjunction is a bit different than the square. The square creates friction and there can be irritation as a result. I think the in conjunction is just like, imagery that's like that mouth that's kind of distorted, like it's like, this is whack, way whack. So I feel like you may actually feel a bit frustrated because you have this Aquarius rising and yet your sun is in Taurus. How may this manifest? Well, let's look at these separately. So Aquarius rising can give an appearance of somebody who does not want to fade into the woodwork, blend into the woodwork. They want to stand out. Your opposite sign is Leo. The opposite sign to Aquarius is Leo. And Leo, like if somebody has Leo rising, they're just like very flamboyant. With Aquarius, it's not that the person is just attention seeking, seeking attention for the sake of attention. You're more interested in making a statement of like individuality. And this can manifest in different ways. If anybody remembers the show Family Ties, this was something that came out when I was in my teens and early adulthood during the 80s when, if you think about the Cosby Show, that was kind of like more of a traditional, there was a conservative, you could almost call it like a backlash due to the late 60s and in the 70s, the permissiveness I think it created that. And we did have, like, Ronald Reagan was the president from 1980 to 88. And so these shows like The Cosby Show, and especially like Family Ties, because they had this protagonist, Michael J. Fox, who was a conservative with hippie parents. And that's the kind of thing, the dynamic that can be going on within yourself, really. Because Taurus is more of a traditional sign, or at the very least, it's more of a conformist, or not a sign that likes to push the envelope, so to speak. Aquarius definitely likes to push the envelope. Aquarius is rebellious. So you may be somebody in your youth who is rebellious, and then you gradually become more like a Taurus, more, I was going to say stable, but both of these signs are fixed signs. So there might be quite a bit of stubbornness, actually, and what we call fixity or rigidity, where it's hard for you to change. You don't like change. They always say that Uranus, the planet that rules you, is so, unpredictable. And while that may be true, and it's a kind of a paradoxical situation with Aquarius, because that might be true, but Aquarius is also a fixed sign. So you will find that Aquarians, or somebody with a prominent Aquarius, will tend to be quite predictable in a lot of ways. And when they are unpredictable, they may even surprise themselves and be like, damn, what got over me? But it's kind of like baked into you to be that nonconformist. But sometimes it may be something that you're like, the reason I brought up like Family Ties is that being a conservative can sometimes be that way to rebel. It's not always going to be the tie-dyed and or the tattoos or whatever. It might be the person with a tie, not tie-dyed, but a tie and a suit coat. Or you grow up in a family of like pagans, and you decide to become a born again Christian. It's not necessarily that you're trying to stick it to your parents or anything like that. It just is that you are a contrarian. You have that contrarian part of yourself. And so you just may kind of like do the opposite of what other people are doing just to avoid conforming with them. As you get older, you can become more cooperative in this regard. It's really funny because Aquarius rules the 11th house in astrology that has to do with groups. And yet, Aquarius doesn't want to necessarily belong to a group, in that you might like to collaborate with others, or, be in a group setting, but you don't necessarily want to have to, agree to some consensus, a general consensus or anything like that. That's just not you. And this can, one of the things about the Aquarius influence is really being able to relate to people from different walks of life. So there's an egalitarian type of spirit coming from Aquarians. In other words, this belief that all people are actually equal. And, it doesn't mean that people are the same, that they have the same abilities, but they have the same worth. And you may be actually somebody who does travel in different worlds, and that you're very comfortable being in one place and then going to another type of environment, and that you can kind of go back and forth. You have that fluidity to be able to do that. That comes from being open-minded, and also somebody who enjoys, these different people from different walks of life. And you also value freedom quite a bit. So anything that feels restrictive is not going to go over well with you. Now, your sun sign, Taurus, is the ruler of the second house. So I said that Aquarius rules the 11th house. Well, Taurus rules the second house of earned income. It can also be about self-worth too. But basically, we look at it from the monetary angle. So there's a lot of that materialism. The 11th house can be the house of gains. So there is a connection in that sense. But the 11th house is like dreaming. Well, you could say like it's dreaming big, but it's like just having these long range goals, these hopes and wishes. And the second house is more grounded because it is an earth house versus an air house. So and the reason I'm speaking about houses is I'm just talking about the archetypes of these signs as they are represented by the houses. But anyway, so as a Taurus, you may gravitate towards professions that involve money. So whether it's banking or even food might be somehow connected to this area. You may be interested in anything to do with even like farming. But that might be like a bit of a long shot because of the earth. And basically anything that is grounded, that is tangible, that is sensual, meaning the five senses are involved. That's why I mentioned cooking, but it could be like music. I mean, it could be artistic for sure. Could be something along those lines. And another area could simply be something that is predictable. Taurus is known for wanting a life that is very regimented. Well, not necessarily regimented, but very predictable. I hesitate to use that word because a lot of people use it in a negative way, but for Taurus, that's not the case. And I would say that having Aquarius rising, there could be like a little bit of tension there, even though, like I said, Aquarius is a fixed sign. It would probably depend on your other, like your inner planets, what they're in, because maybe like if you have Aries, Mars in Aries or something like that, your moon is in fire, some fire or air, you may have a more adventurous spirit and a more need for novelty. Like if you have the moon in Gemini or Aries or something like that, you just may need more stimulation and less kind of that workaday type of schedule where everything is the way it was yesterday. But that can be the trap, I think, sometimes that Taurus falls into. I want to make it clear, though, that, I mean, your sun sign is what I feel like you're growing into your sun sign. So you may, like, by default and maybe by your family of origin, you may have had a family that was more like the Aquarius energy and you're really like a Taurus. So you may have kind of adopted their way of being in order to fit into that framework. And because of that, it may have been something that isn't really who you are, but it's just like your natural way of presenting yourself or whatnot. So the bottom line is that I really feel that you can be, you can make peace with the type of life that is very predictable without it being boring. By integrating whatever that rising sign represents to you with your sun sign. Maybe it simply means that you do have people in your life that are different, that are very diverse. And, because Taurus is a sign that is very, yeah, I think about my late father and the kind of foods that he was a Taurus. And he would just eat like pretty much the same types of foods all the time. Pizza, cheeseburgers, that kind of thing. He wasn't very interested in kind of pushing the envelope, as I mentioned before, in terms of like being adventurous with dietary choices or food choices. So the thing with you is that you may be a little bit more interested in things that are not like familiar to you. And that would be a great thing because it would give you the best of both worlds. Because, Uranus can be unstable. It's the great awakener, but it can also be unstable. As a planetary influence. And Taurus is a rock. So you could integrate it in that sense. And in terms of love, Taurus is a very possessive sign. Aquarius is very non-possessive. Or is it non-possessive or unpossessive? Non-possessive believes that nobody owns anybody else. I have Venus in Aquarius, but like I said, I have Taurus rising. So I did have that possessive quality when I was younger. I do believe, and this is what I have read, that, when you get into your 30s, you kind of like lose that ascendant influence being front and center. And I attribute it to the first Saturn return. When you are around the age of 30 and you start to really individuate. But in your case, you become more like the Taurus. So it could be the person who, when they are younger, they don't even want to have a primary relationship. They just want to date, or maybe they want to date in groups or just have friends. And then they're like a late bloomer when it comes to romantic relationships, and they keep it more platonic when they're younger. The 11th house that Aquarius rules is about platonic love. And that might be something that you are more interested in because you don't really see a desire to be that into one person. But as you get older, you might start to see how that holds value. Another area where I can see, in a similar vein is this idea of polyamory, which has, in recent years become more popularized. And the younger generation seems to embrace that more probably because they are so much more progressive than prior generations, or you could say experimental. But even they, as they get older, may say, you know what? There's something to be said for monogamy. There's something to be said about staying faithful to one person, even though it may be challenging to some degree. There is a reward inherent in doing so because you deepen your relationship with one person rather than spread yourself around rather thinly. So you may kind of like veer off. Again, look to your Venus, look to your Mars to see how that is playing out, and even your moon sign for your emotional nature, because all of those will factor into it. If you're somebody who has Venus, if you're a Taurus who has Venus in Gemini, you may naturally gravitate towards multiple relationships, not settling down with one person. But even that, as you get older, you may go, yeah, I think that it is better to devote your energy onto one person, put it into one person. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a personal reading, you can click on the link below for more information. Thanks for listening. Bye.